Good morning, everyone, or good afternoon, or good evening, whenever you're watching this. This is John Howler from Fellowship Bible Chapel, and I'm doing a special midweek Israel update with my friend Nicole Jansezian from Jerusalem. Nicole used to be with All Israel News, and now is, I believe you're independent, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so she's a journalist in Jerusalem, and you've been there 20 years, maybe?
Yeah, 20 plus. Yep.
Wow. And she's a mom. She's got three children that are in school. And are they still in school this time of year in Jerusalem?
Yeah, till June 30th. The only two dates you can be sure of in Israel on an annual basis is September 1st, school starts, and June 30th, school ends. Everything else is up for grabs.
Okay, so you either look for which one. Well, I shouldn't ask you which one you look forward to the most because your kids might watch this.
Right. Yeah. No
So,
comment. Yeah.
it depends. That would be an acceptable answer to that. So I'm going to cover you three situations with you, and I think we'll probably do them in this order. The situation in the north, which has changed a lot over the last 24 hours as I've been watching things, and the political situation in Israel, which is in a bit of turmoil, and then Yom Yerushalyam Day.
Yes.
So, and it's interesting. This is just a complete aside. So today, Biden is at the Normandy D-Day invasion 80th anniversary ceremony in Normandy. And last night, Nicole, I get this message from a friend. I went to high school in Johnstown, Pennsylvania. My dad was a pastor. And there was a family that was pretty close to mom and dad. It's hard for pastors to get close to any family in the church, but there was one family, and they had daughters around the age of me and my brother. I think they had 4 daughters. And so we did a lot of things together. Our parents would actually go to the shore, they called it, Ocean City, Maryland, in the summer. I was already in college and married by the time they started doing that. So they were close. And Dad was a World War II veteran. And the father of this family was a World War II veteran. And my dad was injured in World War II, had a Purple Heart, and he would never talk about it. And the only thing that mom ever told me was, don't ask him, because he saw things that he never wants to talk about. So he was injured. He was a private first class from Dayton, Ohio. He was in Bob Jones University studying to go into the ministry. He was one of the preacher boys down there, as they called him. And he had a Purple Heart. And the only thing I was able to figure out was he was injured in Belgium during or right around the time of the Battle of the Bulge. And he was shipped home, went through rehab, and I think you can kind of relate to this because you see this happening, I'm sure, with soldiers and reservists and that type of thing in Israel. He was at Camp Atterbury, Indiana, and he was just about done with rehab, and he was literally days away from being shipped back to Europe when the war ended in Europe. But so this message I get from my friend, and I haven't seen her for at least 35 years. Oh, no, I had to be in the 80s. So yeah, it's been 35 years or more since I've seen her. It just happened to run into her one day when we stopped through Johnstown. And she said, my husband said that he was talking to my dad, and he said that my father was involved in the Normandy invasion, I never knew this. So I'm researching it, and I don't doubt it, because he would have, if he'd lived through the Normandy invasion and then stayed in Europe for a while, he would have ended up in Belgium in his infantry division. But it's just kind of shocking, that when you think of that happen, and I have never been able to watch more than 30 seconds of the Normandy invasion scene at any one sitting of the Saving Private Ryan movie that Steven Spielberg did, because I know my dad went there but I just never knew that he may have been involved in the Normandy invasion. So it's just
Wow.
so yesterday you have Yom Yerushalyam, where you're
Yeah.
celebrating the reunification of Jerusalem. And I was there in 2017 for the 50th anniversary, and it was insane and crazy and happy, and people running. I mean, they said there were more people in Jerusalem that day than there had ever been in its history.
Yeah.
Because of the 50th anniversary. So we'll talk about that at the end. So let's talk about the North. So we've got what's going on up there, and what do you think is going to happen?
Okay. Well, as far as what's going to happen, anybody's guess, but it's like every day I veer from like, okay, it's about to boil over to like, and then they rein it back in. And it's really interesting. So it just, the statistics up till now were actually shocking because most of the focus has been on the South, and even the war is still quite active in Gaza, and that's in the South. And then suddenly in the North you hear rocket alerts, you hear sirens, but you don't necessarily hear of impacts, or you don't hear of injuries. But here's why. First of all, there are still around the entire country, 60,000 people still evacuated from their homes, not living
Now,
in their neighborhood.
Is that just from the North, or from the North and the South?
No, that's from the North and the South, and it's from around the country. I think in the North, I think it's it might be half now, the numbers, but and it's like several miles in. I don't know what the exact boundary is, but it's several miles in from the northern border. And in recent weeks, I have noticed that the rockets are they seem to increase in volume, and then sure enough, the numbers bore that out. But they're also getting more accurate, and they also seem to be using more technologically advanced equipment, whether it's suicide drones that are they're bypassing the Iron Dome. So up until now, from October 7th, there have been 5,000 rockets, missiles, drones, the whole package from Hezbollah let's say from Lebanon, because some of it might be from Hamas, into Israel. So 5,000. Now, when it's only like, let's say, none today, but 100 tomorrow, you're not thinking in terms of like, for instance, when you had the Second Lebanon War, and there were, I think, was it 4,000 or something, like all like in 1 month concentrated, but this is like 5,000 spread out for several months. Oh, I like this map. Okay, so it looks like that's the evacuation.
From the Institute for the Study of War, understandingwar.org, and this is as of June 1st. So that's just what I was able to pull up quickly, and it shows the crosshatch section. It shows some of the attacks, and it shows and then of course it's got the Golan Heights highlighted as well as areas that are done. But I'm told from people that I know that live over there. I've interviewed some people from Alma Research,
right?
Avraham Levine and some. I think I've only interviewed him, and I follow Alma closely. Kiryat Shimona is like completely empty, and I've been there, so it's like 25,000 people. But now I'm seeing. Yesterday there were rocket attacks even into Nahariya, which is
yeah.
And we have friends that live there, and I remember being there in 2017 at their house, and they said, if it goes loose in the north, we're like 5 miles from the Lebanon border.
Oh yeah. Yes. So
we have no time to get away.
Right. And exactly, like as far as it is, it's not far. And even, I'm just like looking at the map. So this part that's just striped, but it's not cross striped, they're getting a lot of rockets there as well. There was one that a cruise missile, I think another cruise that came in from the east and was going into the Golan area. And this is, so you think about 5,000 rockets, it's a big number. But Hezbollah has an arsenal of 150,000. So 5,000 is nothing. So if they go to war, imagine that what they could unleash. It's not really. It's incomprehensible what could happen if they decide to go to war. But I heard an interesting analysis where somebody said that Hezbollah, it's not up to Hezbollah whether or not they're going to go to war. If they wanted to, they would have. They already don't have the element of surprise. That was lost. Once they didn't go to war on October 8th, they lost the element of surprise and that sort of advantage. But they could sustain what they're doing for months. Now, if you think about it, Hezbollah is not a state. Hezbollah is an organization that has a high amount of influence in a state, in Lebanon. They're a political party. They're in the parliament. They control that southern part, like south of you see the Litani River. They control that area. They're not really accountable to anybody, as opposed to Israel, which has, a government with a very angry and upset citizenry right now about the way the war is being conducted. It's not ending. The hostages aren't back home. Some people want the war. Some people don't want the war. Some people say, that they have to go into the north. Some people are like, no, back off right now. So you've got like the electorate that's like very involved in giving their opinion to the Israeli government. But in Lebanon, there are every so often you hear like some group or party, a different political party that says they're upset with Hezbollah and what they're doing. But at the same time, they're not accountable. They're not a government. They're answering most likely to Iran, not the Lebanese. Mm-hmm. So they could continue this little, it's a tit for tat. We fire a couple rockets, the IDF goes in, responds, whether they bomb the outpost or they go for targeted assassinations or even a targeted assassination in Iran, for somebody that's connected to Hezbollah. So Israel is, and they're just continuing like this. And if there will be a war, it will actually be Israel's decision, not Hezbollah's decision. And I think when I heard that, I was like, that makes a lot of sense, because these guys got nothing to lose sitting there firing rockets every day. They've lost a couple hundred fighters, but they have more. They lost 5,000 weapons. They have 145,000 more. They can keep going. And it's Israel that eventually has to figure out, what do we do with those people who are evacuated, and with the lack of tourism and the businesses that are being destroyed and the families and the stress and the trauma and whatever of the citizens before they, can say it's safe to go home, because right now it's definitely not.
But have the people up there, are some of them just saying, we're out of here, we're not going back, we can't live like this? Is that an issue?
Yeah, it's a big issue now. It's the same same pattern of the southern communities around Gaza, where they were evacuated, and these kibbutzim are very connected. These, the people they've become a very strong, tight-knit community. And so when they were evacuated, they tried to find residential quarters together. And some did, but I've heard from several of the kibbutzim, they've even, there are some that are stronger and have managed to stick together. And then there are some that say that people are saying, I'm not going to go back, whether it's the South or the North. And they're starting to slip away and say, I'm not, a lot of people won't go back. And the people also can't work. Like if their job is, let's say, a restaurant or a tourist center up in the north. I even heard that, there was two kibbutzim next to each other, and the one is evacuated and the other one isn't. So the one that isn't, they have to stay there. They don't get any government subsidies or compensation, but they're keeping their business open, and they have to pay the employees who can't come to work because they've been evacuated. So the businesses are crashing. And a lot of the North is based on tourism, whether internal or external tourism from overseas. So it's just a really a slow grinding death of the Northern Israel economy, actually.
Well, I've been following this, and as I said, I've interviewed some people from Alma, which is based in the north. Alma Research, based in the north. Israel-alma.org, if you want to follow it. And I read the Lebanese press. I read Al Akbar. I read Al Manar, which are kind of the main Hezbollah mouthpieces. And by the way, folks, if you want to go look at those, if you open them in Chrome, you can get them. Chrome or Brave will automatically translate them. And you can go to the Al Manar website, and they have pictures of all of the Hezbollah fighters that have been killed. It's over 300 now. In fact, it's almost as many were killed in the Second Lebanon War in 2006. And there's not really even, it's just this sort of tit for tat, as you said, tit for tat back and forth that goes on, sort of a low level warfare. So, and so just understand, if you see on the map here, you can see the Israel border, you can see Kiryat Shimona sort of in the right center, and then right above it, you see that blue line, that's the Litani River. And there was after the Second Lebanon War, there was a UN resolution 1701 that said that Hezbollah was not allowed to do anything south of the Litani River. But the people in Alma tell me, and I think it's pretty well known, every other home in southern Lebanon is tied to Hezbollah in some way. It's a missile site, tunnel entrance, tunnel exit, whatever. And the goal, I think, of Hezbollah always was to do in northern Israel what Hamas did from Gaza to southern Israel. And the psychological, and so it appears that what Hezbollah is doing right now, fairly successfully, is sort of a psychological war on people in the north. I mean, and have you talked to these people? What do you find if you talk to them?
Yeah, I mean, general frustration. For the people who have to, let's say, I haven't spoken to many evacuees, but I've spoken to people who aren't evacuated, and they're very torn about whether or not they should be, because they are living with daily sirens that so if it's not for their area, they don't have to run to shelter. So it's not disrupting their lives, but it's like a trauma to hear a siren, to hear many sirens all day long. Now, the other thing is Israel just also raised the number of reservists. So
like 50,000 or something like that. I think was the number.
To 350,000. Is that what you said? Like, I think it's
they called up an additional 50,000.
Okay. So yeah, so I know quite a few people who have been called to the border. I've spoken with them, and there was just yesterday, there were two, one was in Gaza. There was a soldier killed up there. A drone slipped through the air defenses and landed in an area that ended up injuring, I think, about 10 soldiers. And so this is, this is really heating up, and people are just, I think there's a general sense of being torn. Like, nobody really wants war, but you want to know you're safe to go back. Right. So, and you've reported on the war, like the potential consequences of Hezbollah missiles, which they are so much better armed than Hamas that it would be unimaginable what they could do. But, and then also,
I think the numbers are like, they have like 10 times the number of rockets and missiles, and they have precision guided missiles.
Right. They have better weapons than Hamas did. And then the complication for Israel is you're going to war with a sovereign nation that has allies, as opposed to, sorry for the Palestinians, but they don't appear to have the allies that come to their defense militarily. And they're not a sovereign nation. So at least as of yet. So that's easy. It sounds bad to say, but it's easier for Israel to respond to them than it would be to respond to Hezbollah, because then you would have Lebanese people, civilians getting killed, and then the government would be under pressure to respond. And then Lebanon would drag in Syria, and would Syria drag in Iran, and there you go around the map. So yeah, it's crazy.
So there's a lady, I listen to a lot of different people, Zarit Zahavi, Alma, and Amir Bibi, who I know from, and the people, Danny Seaman and others with the IDSF, and I've interviewed them, and so I have a little bit of, but there was a lady I came across, and she was on a channel, I think it was a YouTube channel called Heart of a Nation. Eli somebody, I can't remember his name, but her name is Miri Eisen.
Oh yeah,
she's a retired idea.
Yeah.
She's IDF a retired spokesperson. IDF spokesperson, and she's the director of the International Institute for Counterterrorism up at, I forget what university it's at. And she was doing an interview with this guy on the Heart of a Nation thing this about a month ago. And she said, he said, what happens when everything breaks loose in the North? And she said, well, I think I told you what Avraham Levine told me. I said, what happens if this breaks loose? Right. He goes, no child will go to school in Israel for a year, which I think was you were kind of shocked by that.
Yeah.
He meant the whole of Israel.
Yeah.
Because of the precision guided nature of their weapons. And then Miri Eisen, in her interview, she said, we will have 500 casualties a day, 500 Israeli dead a day for 10 days. And it will level off a bit, but it will still be in the hundreds for weeks.
Wow.
And so, and I read one of their, I think it was the Counterterrorism Institute did a thing a few years ago, and they said like 25,000 civilian casualties, meaning deaths in the North.
Wow.
And what would that do to, and I'm sort of having trouble because Israel's not that big of a country.
Right.
I mean, when we were in 2017, Trump was going to be in Jerusalem. So we said, this is not a good day to be in Jerusalem. So we drove down to Jericho, up the Jordan Valley, all the way through the Golan Heights, and then drove all the way along the Lebanon border, all the way over to Nahariya. I mean, so we left at 10 in the morning, and we're in Nahariya by 4 o'clock.
Yep.
And that included stopping to look at different places. But it's not that big of a country. And you need people to be able to live in the North. I mean, you can't keep increasing the buffer zone, I guess is the question.
Yeah, for Independence Day, for Israel's Independence Day, a couple weeks ago, it's not May 14th like it as they do it on the Hebrew calendar. I forgot when it was exactly, but the Israeli version of Saturday Night Live had this skit. One of their takeoffs where they had the guy playing Netanyahu say like, we are, here in our, what is it, 78th year or something, we're a strong nation. And it shows the map of Israel with just like the center, like, from like Beersheba to Herzliya, or said right, across, like not none of the top, none of the bottom. And it's like, we're a strong Israel. And then like rocket alerts went off in the North, and then they pulled down, they made it even smaller. And he goes, we're very strong Israel. And it's crazy because people all around the country always say to people from Jerusalem, how can you live in Jerusalem? Isn't it dangerous? Isn't it scary? And I'm like, now I'm saying, guys, how could you not live in Jerusalem? Like, this is like so far the safest place. Now, will it be safe? Obviously, if you saw my video from the night of the Iranian drones, we had fireworks outside my own balcony before we even had sirens, by the way, standing there taking video and then going, should I be in a shelter right now? And then I remembered what you said. I remembered John Haller telling me that, I heard this guy said this and that. And I'm like, is this the start of that? Should we run to the shelter? Will the shelter even matter at this point? And anyway, and then so aside from
but
that,
Nicole, that was 300 or 350
only,
drones, missiles, and
only. I know.
only.
No,
And,
I know.
like Miri Eisen and all the people say, when Hezbollah cuts loose, it's 5,000 a day
A
for
day.
weeks.
Exactly. Exactly. Yes. And I mean, if you, just when you see the numbers, like, 5,000 rockets in this amount of time, 8 months, without really being at war feels like a lot. But then when you subtract that from their arsenal and you say, they still have 145,000 more. Yeah, it's a big deal. So,
Assuming they haven't had replacements shipped
exactly.
in
I
the
mean, that's
meantime,
the
which they probably
minimum.
have.
Exactly. That's a minimum. So, yeah, look, the thing is, the defense minister, Yoav Gallant, said a couple weeks ago that he said, get ready for a hot summer. And he didn't mean the weather, presumably. And then also, they just had yesterday revealed a few, I think the army, what is he called? Oh my gosh, what's the position? The head of the army. Forgot the title in English. Had said that we have a plan and we've just done a very serious exercise, and our readiness, our preparedness for a war in the north has never been stronger. So there have been like little hints, little drops along the way of like, preparing. But actual warfare is another story. Now, I understand the need for safety in the north and security, but opening up a war, like if a war is opened up, it seems to be by Israel's decision, not Hezbollah's. And if that's the case, then Israel has to know everything you're talking about the response and the expectations, and it's gonna, it'll take a few weeks to prepare the citizens for something like that. So, yeah. So I basically, I have no answer, of course, since I don't have a sense of whether or not this is going into full-fledged war. I don't feel that in the near future, like in this week or next week. I would say maybe after June 30th, when school is out, but I don't know. And I think it also depends on the situation in Gaza. You can't just go to war in the north if you still have reserves in Gaza and Hamas is still not eliminated.
Right. So I don't know. I don't know the answer for everybody over there. And I've followed it closely. So we need to move on to the next topic in just a minute here, but the report yesterday was that, and I watched on Almanar, Hezbollah publishes these videos, and they get these very precise videos. So somehow they're getting these videos from somewhere within Israel or from drones or whatever. But it appears that they may have taken out an Iron Dome battery, and there were a couple of attacks where people said there were no siren warnings. Have you heard about this?
Several recently, and that's why I am saying that there is some kind of increase in the frequency and the technology that is somehow bypassing, the air defense systems. There have been several, like I think the one that landed yesterday that ended up being deadly. It didn't have sirens, and a few others. There's a lot of drones, a lot more drones than just rockets as well. And let's not forget the Houthis and other proxies in Iraq, like the Houthis in Yemen, other proxy groups in Iraq that are still firing sporadically. But it's like, you talk about it's from many fronts, and yeah, it's very active and it's very hot. Oh, and also I should say in the last couple of days, these rockets, along with our weather, which has been very hot and dry this past week, started fires. So there were fires all over the north.
Especially up around Kiryat Shimona, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So everybody, we're praying for the situation there, but it just appears that it's very, but we've been hearing this now ever since October 7th, that a war in the north is imminent.
Yeah.
So I don't know at how many months it takes for imminent definition to change but it seems to be evolving.
Yeah.
So, okay, so we'll keep that in mind, and we'll follow up with you on that. It's I've been following it because to me, it's they say the tunnel system in southern Lebanon is far more extensive than Gaza, which was way beyond what anybody expected.
Hundreds of miles of tunnels in Gaza. Yeah.
Right. But they say it's more extensive. It goes all the way to Beirut from the Lebanon border. And a lot of it's drilled through bedrock. Okay. So let's move on now. Let's talk about something very easy to talk about. I'm sure you can cover it in 30 seconds. Ha 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 ha. The political situation.
Yeah, 30 seconds. Yeah. Uh-huh. Yeah.
So kind of give me an assessment of what you see going on there. When Nicole and I met, we were over at the Knesset for the media summit about a year and a half ago. So that's when I first met Nicole, and we kind of hung out together that day at the Knesset, and that was when the current government was still being formed.
Right.
The Knesset was meeting, but Netanyahu was not officially the prime minister yet. Right. Well, he was kind of the prime minister, but it was still in a big state of turmoil.
He didn't have his coalition yet or something like that. It was still being formed. I don't remember.
Well, you remember we went to the room and they had people speak, like Sharon Haskell, who used to be in the Likud. Member of Knesset, very articulate, very intelligent person.
I interviewed her. Yeah, she's awesome.
Yeah, and then of course, and then at the end, my friend Yishai Fleischer was the interpreter for Ben Gvir, and as Ben Gvir kind of came into the room, all the other Knesset people got up and left. Oh, I've got a committee meeting I have to get to, and it was very clear what was going on because minister, I guess he's a minister now. Ben Gvir was sort of toxic to them. They didn't want to be seen in the same room with him. So it was a very good. And so my question is, have things changed since December of 2022?
Only in different ways, let's say. Well, first of all, I was thinking the fires in the north are like a metaphor for the political situation. And, when I saw like a headline, like I get headlines flashing on my phone, and I saw like srifot, which is fires. And I was like, oh, more fires in the north. And it was like, no, on the Tel Aviv highway, because the protests have picked up to such an escalation. Like, I mean, I'll bring this back to the actual coalition and stuff like that. But the political situation right now is on fire. Most of it stemming from the issue of hostages. 124 hostages still in Gaza, and dozens of them believed to be dead, actually. And then some, they're trying to save the remaining ones that that might still be alive. They the families are out there protesting every day. In Tel Aviv, in Jerusalem, everywhere. And it's become just, the grief and the angst of the families has overwhelmed the political scene, and it's polarized. It's taken on, from before October 7th, you and I were talking about the judicial reform and the protests that were going on. And now it's like the protests just morphed from that into bring back the hostages. And then within, there are people who just want to make a deal, stop the war, make a deal, bring back whoever is still alive. So that is influencing the politics, because on a daily basis, you've got talks about the deal, whether or not they're going to do a deal. They're talking, mediating between Qatar and Egypt and the US, to try to come to an agreement. And then you've got all of the coalition issues. Now, so here is something very interesting, because you talked about Ben Gvir and his parties. There's a few national religious parties like his party and Smotrich, and they're Orthodox Jewish. Now, then there's the ultra Orthodox, and those four parties, the two of the Ben Gvir Smotrich and the two ultra Orthodox parties, are with Netanyahu's Likud party, and they form the 64-member coalition. So Ben Gvir and Smotrich are saying no deal, continue the war. Now, Shas and United Torah Judaism, which are the ultra Orthodox, or maybe let just Shas, I know about for sure. Just I think they have 9 seats or 10. They just officially announced that the saving of lives is more important, or is the most important concept of Judaism. So we will support a deal, even if it means ending the war. Now that throws the coalition into a flux, because Ben Gvir has refused, Smotrich has refused, and Likud now would have to decide. Netanyahu would have to decide: go with the deal, or and appease the ultra Orthodox, or reject the deal and go with Ben Gvir and those parties. So that is the impasse that we're looking at now. That might be a moot point, because there may not be a deal, because Hamas always ends up rejecting a deal and saying it's not enough and we want this and that. So there may not be a deal in the end, but if there is, Netanyahu will have to choose between his coalition partners. So I find this is very fascinating, what's happening now.
Well, so let me this is the cynical lawyer asking the question, okay? So cynicism, I don't know if it's a spiritual gift, but
I think it is,
as because you sort of I'm not sure where skepticism stops and cynicism begins, or if they're the same thing. So I hear what Shas said about human life is more important than anything else. Mm-hmm. And immediately I started saying the little political chess in my head, that, one of the big issues in the Israeli government right now is the exemption for Orthodox serving from the Haredim or whatever, not serving the military.
Right.
And I've watched the arguments back and forth. And one of the arguments that the Shas and United Torah Judaism is, we're concerned about life and we study the Torah, and therefore we contribute to the overall society here on the religious side, which is very, very important for a Jewish state. And so that's our contribution. So we don't need to serve in the military. And so when I hear him say that, I'm like, are they doing that because they're trying to also set up the argument for the military service thing that's currently a hot issue? Mm-hmm.
Well, whether or not they are, they certainly aren't making political friends. Like, they need that whole coalition, or they need all the votes they can get to defer their enlistment, to continue to defer their enlistment. So I'm not really sure, but you are correct to be cynical, because in Israeli politics, you cannot, there's so many twists and turns. You don't want to get blindsided. So that's an interesting aspect of it. But I don't know. It will matter though if the war cabinet has to vote on a deal, or the security cabinet, or whoever. Like it will matter when it comes down to a vote, because you still have Gantz, Benny Gantz, and Eisenkot in the war cabinet, and their votes will go toward a deal. So so it'll just be interesting, even if it gets that far.
So here's my confusion, and I don't know if I'm just sort of now being I'm getting older, and so maybe my mental faculties are declining, or Joe Biden is really getting to me. Okay. And by the way, I do not like I call it the Biden administration for obvious reasons. And so he comes out, he does this horrible interview that just doesn't make any sense. It's not coherent with Time magazine. And then he does this speech last Friday, I don't know, 15 minutes or so, about, here's the Israel plan for peace and ceasefire with Gaza. And immediately Netanyahu and all these other people come out saying, we never proposed that. That's the Hamas plan. So what do you think is the real story here? Because it's very confusing to us to know, what did Israel propose? And believe me, our as a conservative in American politics, which I know isn't necessarily the same as conservative in Jewish politics,
right?
But as a conservative in American politics, what I see happening is during the Obama administration and now on steroids during the Biden administration, what I call the third Obama administration, we are being gaslit all the time by these jokers in Washington. It's sort of like, no. I know you see that, there's a forest fire here, but it's not a forest fire.
Yeah.
It's really a solar panel working. I mean, it's a total lie and propaganda. And so what's the story on this peace deal, and where did it come from, and who's lying to us, or are they all lying to us?
I really believe that we don't know anything of what's really happening. Whether or not that's to protect the process, to keep it out of the media, whether or not it's because there's political dealings going on, or just that nobody, or it's so tightly kept. But I will tell you this. I don't know, like for where it stands, who knows, and who is actually orchestrating it, and where. We didn't even talk about the Saudis and how they fit in, if they fit in, if they're having influence, if they're being offered something, to even make peace with Israel, and then Hamas will get. I don't know. There's so much going on that I believe that could be going on that we don't know. So many deals that were already in the works before the war started, and now how do they fit in? But I will tell you, like you were saying about like what Hezbollah shows on its sites. I'm subscribed to Hamas on Telegram. And Hamas showed us hostages months ago, dead, showed that that these hostages died. Now, Hamas also contends that it was because of an Israeli bombing, you killed your own people. And of course, that's partly psychological warfare, and it cannot be verified. But Israel only months later came out, just this past week, and announced that they can confirm the deaths of 4 hostages that Hamas showed us months ago, and there's several of them, and it's almost like, I'm not saying believe Hamas, I'm just saying, but there's a lot of the information is being delayed and being kept for many reasons, but the truth was out there months ago. And as far as what's happening now, we know Israel also, by the way, this is other, I don't know where I think the army may have found videos that were, Hamas had taken on October 7th, and they're still going through Gaza, they're finding stuff. Did you see the video of the 5 female hostages, the soldiers who were taken?
Soldiers. Yeah, I actually played a little bit of that in my update that I did last Sunday.
You can't upload it to YouTube. That video, I couldn't upload it.
It's in my update, and I haven't gotten a restriction on it. Now, I don't remember if I just used stills from it or I grabbed it off of Twitter. And I think I put it in. It was embedded in a Twitter post, so I figured out how to kind of copy the Twitter post.
Very good.
And post it, and so the video is in there. And sometimes I alter the speed a little bit because it kind of fools the people who check for copyright and that type of thing. It's
okay.
Now I've given one of John's hacks, and I've destroyed it for everybody.
Edit this part out, but
yeah, no, but I did have it, and I saw it, and Nicole, I watch the anti-Israel, Jew-hating fever swamp, some Twitter accounts and some Telegram accounts.
Mm-hmm.
And when they remember the hostage, the gal who was the young lady, what was her name, Mahani Loki or something like that, who was at the party down there. And yeah, that's her name.
Yeah.
And so they said that when they got her body back last week or 10 days ago, her parents went and identified the body because they could identify the tattoo on her. Mm-hmm. And immediately all these people were saying, oh, see, she was killed by Israeli troops on October 7th. They've had the body and they've had it preserved in a refrigerator and they planted it in Gaza to make Hamas look bad. These were Jewish websites, Jewish people saying this.
That's interesting because you can see her body on a truck, on a pickup truck on the way into Gaza. You could see her. You could see, these 3 elderly men that were just announced in Israel that they were killed in Gaza. Hamas showed them months ago, and Hamas is quite proud of it. Like, they show it on their channels. So this isn't like, even defaming them. They told us what they did, so it's not really a question, some of these things. So it's well, I don't know, that's a whole can of worms, is this whole
I'm just saying the propaganda that comes out of this thing is unlike anything that I've ever seen. And it's sort of like, I hate to bring it up, the Trump trial. Okay. The Trump trial. Now I have my thoughts on that as a lawyer, and I've done some white collar stuff. And so I understand it a little bit more than I think most people do. But the Trump trial gave everybody what they wanted. So if you're pro-Trump, you can say Trump is being persecuted. If you're anti-Trump, you can say, look at the great criminal justice system we have in America. Everything is perfect, and a jury of his peers convicted him, and everything is fine and good. And it's like completely not intersecting worlds that people are living in. It's I say this to younger people that I meet. I'm glad I'm an old guy, because I'm not going to have to live that much longer with this stuff. Statistically, statistically, the chances are that I won't. Okay, I'm 70. I don't know when I'll die.
No, but I know what you mean. It's like, I just look at my kids and I'm like, God bless. I don't know. They don't have a chance with this with the technology, with what's coming out. So,
and it's that if you want to go look at it, I did a 2-hour prophecy roundtable on AI and technology a week ago yesterday. And it's about the 3rd one that I've done. And it's just 4 guys, 5 guys sitting around talking about developments in technology and AI and that type of thing. And the first one we did got over 250,000 views. I mean, a 2.5-hour discussion, no graphics or anything. It's people are really hungry for this stuff, I think.
Yeah.
So anyway, do you think Netanyahu's coalition is going to hold together?
I don't. You know what? I'm going to segue into Jerusalem Day with this answer.
Because that's a safe subject. Okay.
No, because this is perfect. No, because it just goes to I think because there was an example of what happened with Jerusalem Day that that shows that it's like fraying. The coalition is fraying at the edges. So
is that the picture that I showed you from the Wall Street Journal this morning?
No, but we could talk about that too. I mean, that is Jerusalem Day, that picture. But about Ben Gvir, who is a big supporter of Jerusalem Day, and so you see all the young people surging. So they would be just, if you say stereotypically the type of voter that would be for Ben Gvir.
You're talking about the settler movement.
the hilltop youth, the settlers, but not just I support Israel, I love Israel, and I live in Efrat or something. But I mean the people who really have like some zeal and can tend to also be extremists, and there's been a lot of it. A lot of settler extremism since October 7th, and it doesn't go reported because it doesn't get reported because it's getting lost in the winds of war. But Ben Gvir, Jerusalem Day is sort of like the day that kind of characterizes his politics, because it's the unification of Jerusalem as, under Israeli rule and as the capital of Israel. And he said things that, while on paper you might agree with and your viewers might agree with, when he says, like, Jerusalem is ours. It's not so much the words "Jerusalem is ours," but it's the message. Now you've got a couple 100,000 Palestinians, or that live in Jerusalem. They're Arabs that don't have Israeli citizenship, don't quite have Palestinian citizenship. They say they identify as Palestinian, and they also live in Jerusalem. And of course, others who maybe aren't Israeli, Christians and Muslims. Now, when Jerusalem Day happens, a lot of people can just be happy and dance in the streets and say that, God gave us the city and we won the war and whatever. And then a lot of people can do what they're doing. And they're attacking a reporter. Now, you might say, you showed me before the headline, he's Arab. The reporter's Arab, like you can tell by his name. And so it could
he's a pro-Hamas activist who kind of pretends to be a reporter. That's my personal opinion.
I don't know who he is. Okay.
He works for Al Jazeera, which is
how is he here? It stands here. But I'll tell you what, I was at the last two Jerusalem Day marches as a reporter, and I am not I'm American. You could say I'm American. I'm not Arab, right? And I'm not working for Al Jazeera. And the threats that I got scared me. I actually stuck myself next to a male reporter who I didn't know. And I was just like, I'm going to stick with you. Okay. And also made sure I was near the police or within eye shot of the police, because these guys would go by and they would, in a very leering way, they'd be like, who are you? Who are you with? And I'd be like, I'm a reporter. Who are you with? And it's like, it doesn't matter. All reporters are leftists, and leftists are bad. Okay, so that's one thing. Now, what else? What are their chants as they're marching? As I'm standing there at Damascus Gate, watching the hundreds, tens of thousands march through, they're chanting. They're chanting this. They're chanting, Muhammad is dead. Muhammad is dead, which is very inflammatory when you're standing at Damascus Gate with a bunch of Muslims. And the other thing, they're chanting, burn the villages, burn the villages. And they are chanting death to Arabs. So this is what's going on. Now, this is by no means indicative of the entire Israeli population. Sure. This is in no way, I'm not saying this as a hit piece on the state of Israel and freedom of religion and stuff like that. No, but we need to be aware that there are elements, and they hate the Christians as much as they hate the Arabs. And, and I, as a female reporter standing there, was fair game as well. And it's a very scary situation. And this does happen. All that to say that Ben Gvir said, Jerusalem is ours and Jews should pray. Under my administration, Jews will pray at the Temple Mount. The Prime Minister, Benjamin Netanyahu, had to come out immediately with a brief but definitive statement saying the status quo has not nor will be changed. The status quo on the Temple Mount has not been changed, because his words are inflammatory, not just to Hamas or the Arabs living in East Jerusalem or the Palestinians in the West Bank. those words are inflammatory to the entire Arab world, including the Arab partners, the UAE, Bahrain, etc. So he is becoming a liability yet again to Netanyahu's government. And so, long way of answering your question, but at least I covered the third topic to say, is this coalition going to stand? It's between that and the hostage deal. It's on shaky grounds right now. The political scene is up in flames, along with the North. And we're in for a hot summer, and nobody knows what's going to happen.
So the other morning, so I sort of follow the Charles Spurgeon, Cal Thomas method to informing myself. So I get up in the morning and I read, as Cal Thomas used to say, Spurgeon sort of said it, but he's way too eloquent for me to quote. So Cal Thomas, the conservative commentator here in the United States, said, I get up in the morning and I read the Bible and the New York Times. I read the Bible because I want to figure out what God's doing. And I read the New York Times so I can figure out what the other side is doing.
Yeah.
So I read a lot of media. And so I was watching Morning Joe on Monday last week. And they immediately came out because to someone here, and I'm not necessarily pro Netanyahu or anything like that. I mean, there are things that are done to him that I think are very unjust, just like Trump. And so, if you say anything to complain about that, you immediately get tagged with this. Oh, you're just a supporter of Donald Trump. You're defending an unrighteous man. And it's like, no. I'm looking at the whole process and procedure. So the conversation for the first few minutes, and they had David Ignatius from the Washington Post, Mika Brzezinski, and they had Edward Luce, who's one of the editors for the Financial Times in London.
Okay.
And they were saying, no, this is not Joe Biden's not trying to interfere in Israeli politics, even though they come out and say, we got to get rid of Benjamin Netanyahu. And then like everything's going to go fine in the Middle East if Netanyahu's not involved, which is like a completely insane thing to say, in my opinion. Mm-hmm. And look at it. And they said, oh, no, we're not doing that. And then within 35 seconds, Edward Luce and Ignatius are talking about the fact that, well, this would all go better if we got rid of Benjamin Netanyahu. So they were gaslighting us for the first part. And then they figured, well, we can come out and now we can say the truth. So it's usually how you got to go with the New York Times. Everybody says, oh, you shouldn't read that. Read the whole article and you'll get the truth at the end. Okay, you'll get the editorial part first. So let me just ask you this question. So I'm just going to ask you this as I try to think through this. So Ben Gavir's group, they say the solution is Jews should go live in Gaza, right? Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm not sure how to ask this the right way without throwing a bomb into the room. But so tell me why that is, in the way things are going with Hezbollah in the north and Hamas in Gaza, why that's such a crazy idea.
To send Jews back to live in Gaza.
To occupy Gaza, actually. I think that's what Ben Gvir would like. And Ben Gvir would like to occupy, at least his ideological roots appear to be in the movement that would say occupy the West Bank. Yeah,
they do. I mean, they go to outposts and they build outposts
and they build settlements and
get torn down and then they build them again. Yeah. And well, the people who would be opposed to resettling Gaza would say, I mean, first of all, just from a military perspective, how do you protect the Jews that are there? It's the same as the West Bank. For instance, like what's happening in Gaza is contained. The only people, I mean, there are Israeli soldiers dying, but anyone else dying now since October 8th is Palestinian, is in Gaza. And if the same thing erupted in the West Bank, many, many more Israelis would be killed. So the argument is, from the anti side, that if there was a resettlement, what would be, and that's the reason they got out in the first place, like there was military, it was a drain on the military to protect them there in Gaza. Now, of course, then the other side would say, yeah, but as soon as Israel moved out, they rearmed and then they started shooting rockets nonstop, from 2005, which is also true. But, there's if there's a resettlement, it's also going to probably go work against Israel on the international scene in terms of making a deal with Saudi Arabia and keeping the Abraham Accords intact. So so it will have ripple effects, and I mean, a lot of people believe that Israel should move away from being a military occupier to having like some sort of other force, whether it be Palestinian or be international, be the ones to be the power or to get the Gaza Strip, the Palestinians, a state, not a state, whatever, in order. Because if Israel continues doing that, then Israel is financially and militarily drained.
Yeah, that's an issue we don't have time to talk about this morning, because the economic costs of this war are pretty.
Yeah, for
really starting to be a drain. Yeah,
for everybody. I mean, for you think of even COVID, when Israel closed its borders, and Israel's borders are not closed. You can come to Israel right now, and tour the part of the country that you can tour, which is most of it actually. But you can come. But
and now they're going to do a Saturday Night Live skit on the shrinking area that it's safe to tour.
Yes,
like you can walk around your hotel lobby is the eventual,
as long as it's in Jerusalem.
Yeah, and your hotel lobby, right?
Yeah, and so you've got, but the Palestinian economy as well, like Bethlehem, which is based on tourism, especially at Christmas. Since nobody was coming to Israel, like tourists just aren't coming. The tourism sector is not shut down. It's just nobody's coming, and that means they're also not going to the Palestinians. So everybody, the economy, wall to wall, is walloped. Not even to talk about Gaza, because that's like incomprehensible. The rebuilding, the even like their goods, whether what they can buy, what aid they're getting, forget that. It's what the economy's wiped out there. It already was, and now it's really suffering, like all aspects in Israel, but ripple effect big time into the Palestinian economy as well. So and there's no end in sight to the war.
Yeah, there's so many issues that we could talk about.
I know.
I keep threatening some Sunday. I spend hours and hours and hours reviewing things, reading intelligence reports and all this stuff. And I'm tempted just some Sunday to just like forget it and just get up there and open my Twitter feed or my Telegram feed and just start talking about what's going on. Because, and I'm sitting here, in my Twitter feed to the left of my the window that I have you in is Yair Lapid ranting about the maritime border deal that he signed.
Yes.
Saying like, oh, well, you can't criticize me for this because it's not the rest of the border. It's out in the ocean. And it's like, and he's,
oh my gosh. Oh, now you got me. Look, I had mine on airplane mode, and now I want to go to Lapid. You're tempting me.
It was I think it was Gaddy Taub that reposted it.
Oh, okay. That's so funny.
It was somebody else who posted it, and then he said, "This is the Gaddy Taub, who is a man of the left and has sort of changed." He said, "This is how messed up our politics are," and there's Lapid, going on and saying that it's the land. I didn't do anything with the land; it was just the ocean, and it was like. By the way, I don't know if you know this. I followed this quite. I've got big graphics I've done on this because it's a big deal. Our government forced you guys to that deal. Forced Israel to that deal. Amos Hochstein, who's our energy guy, and I need to do an article on it because it's very, very complicated, and it ties into Iran and our promotion of Iran and our government, all this other stuff. But they've been drilling in those areas that they got under that maritime deal. I don't know if you know this. It's been in Al Akbar, And so they hired a French energy company called Total to do the test drilling.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
And all they're getting is sand and water. Right across the maritime border from where Israel has these big gas wells operating. And Al Akbar's going, oh, well, Israel's stealing all of it or making our test drills go bad, the typical conspiracy theory. But it's been a total bust for them, for Lebanon, getting anything out of these areas.
That's too bad. I mean, if anybody needs it, it's Lebanon. That's like one of the worst economies in the Middle East.
Right, but the government's effectively controlled in great part by Hezbollah. So maybe it's kind of mixed bad and good news because you've got a completely failed state up there.
Right.
In Lebanon. And that just allows Hezbollah and Iran to do whatever they want to do. And maybe that's by their design and everything. So I don't think so, but Yom Yerushalyam, I mean, it's a good day, right?
It depends who's looking at it.
Okay.
But, no, it's supposed to be, I would say most Israelis approach it as a day of national pride, and then there's a very strong element that has co-opted it, and it's become in recent years something that as a reporter you're going to be covering because it's full of tension and it's violence. There were, I think, 18 arrests yesterday for violence for, gosh, what's the legal word? John, help me. I don't know, like not armed assaults, assault. Assault and
or whatever,
and it goes on for a couple of days, and it would be if it's just to celebrate, national pride is national pride, but if it's also with calls for death to the other, and we're going to burn your villages. 3 days after the last Jerusalem day or whatever, I don't remember what day, maybe it was Thursday. I remember being on Shabbat. I was in the Armenian quarter, and there were still a lot of the young people that get bussed in from all over the country. They stayed in Jerusalem over the weekend, and they still marched with flags for days following Jerusalem Day. And during Shabbat, there were several groups of these young people, and there's one group of young girls, like 100 of them, were actually chanting, "Burn your villages, burn your villages. We're going to burn your villages to the ground." As they marched through the Armenian quarter and looked at the people standing there on the side, not even knowing who we are. And I was like, wow, like what does that say to my kids? What places for you here if your village is going to be burned by the majority? Now, that is not the majority of Israelis, but these are now the feelings associated with Jerusalem Day, which is unfortunate for many Israelis who just want to celebrate national pride, but it's been co-opted by extremist movements. So that's why it's a controversial day. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with it. It's great for reporters and for the news. So what can I say?
Well, we were there in 2017, and which was the 50th anniversary of the Six-Day War. It was celebrated in May that year. And it was fantastic. It was, a lot of celebration and
which it was, and it used to
marches and people. Yeah. But then how many years ago was this where they gather at the Kotel in this big group and they're dancing around with the flags and everything?
Yeah, they're still doing, yeah.
And what had happened though was it was in evening, like the day before Jerusalem Day, I think. Mm-hmm. So there's thousands of people in the Western Wall Plaza, and up top on the Temple Mount, the Arabs, the Muslims up there are throwing stuff down onto the crowd below, and they're shooting off fireworks, and they caught a tree on fire. Do you remember this? And the image that came out was that immediately the Muslim press, Al-Aqsa, they're burning Al-Aqsa, and look at them celebrating down below. And down below, you've been there, you can't even see that up there. And so it was the image, and then that led to a lot of rockets coming in from Gaza. And then they had an operation into Gaza and everything like that. So
that's right.
And it was in that case, they caused the fire, but then they blamed the people celebrating down below. So it's like I said, it's sort of like the Trump thing, whatever narrative you want, you get the facts to support it and make and argue your case, regardless of whether that's the reality or not.
That's become like 100% of the media these days. It's just pick an argument and get your narrative, and that's it. But yesterday, the Israeli police, they had 3,000 police deployed in the city. So, you know, it could have been a lot worse, let's say. And as far as I know, there weren't any fires here. So that was miraculous.
So, well, Nicole, obviously we didn't get to everything. We kind of got off with.
You got to a lot.
I'm sort of the king of the rabbit trails. That's sort of that I, and it's sort of like this. I can't have a linear conversation with anybody about anything anymore because there's so much going on.
Yeah. Jerusalem is not a linear place. So you know what? I think it was perfect.
It's sort of like, you know, what's the thing they call Jerusalem syndrome or something like that. It seems to be, it's spreading more than the pandemic ever did.
Yeah, sure.
I think it's a good way to say it.
Yeah.
So thank you, Nicole. Nicole Jansezian. And where can people follow you? You have a YouTube channel called Nick Jan. I know you put up some videos.
Yeah, so it's for YouTube, you would put like YouTube at Nicoolness, Nicoolness. My name is I put Nick Jan because nobody can spell Jansezian, although we should all try. And my website is Nick Jan, like it's spelled there under my picture there, nickjan.com. So from there,
that one had never been taken,
believe it or not. And nobody took Nicole Jansezian either, but I figured that's too hard to spell.
Well, that one probably, you were pretty safe on that one.
Make it easy. So if you go to the website, you can find links to everything. So,
okay, Nicole, thanks a lot.
I appreciate it.
God bless. We'll keep you in our prayers. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thanks.
Okay.